Hey everybody, this is the introduction to a book by Paul Bellis titled Marxism in the U.S.S.R, The Theory of Proletarian Dictatorship and the Marxist Analysis of Soviet Society. Introduction. Here we go. Among the most significant events of recent developments within the European reformist left has been the explicit abandonment by the French Communist Party at its 22nd Congress in January/February 1976 of the Marxist concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat. This theoretical rupture clearly corresponds to the political practice of the Communist Party of France and its sister parties, geared as they are to the progressive transformation of the bourgeois state through the election of successive, quote, left, end quote, governments supported from below by the, quote, mass pressure, end quote, of an amorphous and undefined popular movement. Eurocommunism's Fabian strategy. Let's look up Eurocommunism for the kids. Eurocommunism was a trend in the 1970s and 1980s within various Western European communist parties, which said they had developed a theory and practice of social transformation more relevant for Western Europe. During the Cold War, they sought to reject the influence of the Soviet Union and the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The trend was especially prominent in Italy, Spain, and France. The origin of the term Eurocommunism was subject to great debate in the mid-1970s, being attributed to Zbigniew Brzezinski and Origo Levy. Among others, Jean-Francois Revel once wrote that, quote, one of the favorite amusements of, quote, political scientists, end quote, is to search for the author of the term Eurocommunism, end quote. In April 1977, Deutschland Archiv decided that the word was first used in the summer of 1975 by Yugoslav journalist Frane Barbieri, former editor of Belgrade's NIN news magazine. It's funny because it's like in capital, all caps, and like italicized, so it looks like 9-inch nails. Outside Western Europe, it is sometimes referred to as neocommunism. This theory stresses greater independence from the Soviet Union. So that's Eurocommunism. And Fabianism refers to the politics of the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society is a British socialist organization whose purpose is to advance the principles of social democracy and democratic socialism via gradualist and reformist effort in democracies, rather than by revolutionary overthrow. The Fabian Society was also historically related to radicalism, a left-wing liberal tradition. One of the founding organizations of the Labor Representation Committee in 1900, and has an important influence upon the Labour Party which grew from it, the Fabian Society has had a powerful influence on British politics. Members of the Fabian Society have included political leaders from other countries, such as Jawaharlal Nehru, who adopted Fabian principles as part of their own political ideologies. The Fabian Society founded the London School of Economics in 1895. Today, the Fabian Society functions primarily as a think tank and is one of 20 socialist societies affiliated with the Labour Party. Similar societies exist in Australia and Canada and New Zealand and in Sicily. So, back to the text. Eurocommunism's Fabian strategy and Eurocommunism's repudiation of the conception most central to the theoretical practice of Marx, Engels, and Lenin are, however, indissolubly bound up with what has for decades constituted the major obstacle to socialist revolution in the West. The existence of societies which, while formally proclaiming their incarnation of socialism, are characterized by signal inequality, an absence of any effective democracy, and continuing deficiencies in the supply and quality of many basic consumption goods. One second, let me try something. Sorry, I'm looking. Okay, never mind. Okay, I was looking for the footnotes and see. I mean, the endnotes and seeing if I could get to them easily, but I cannot. Wait, 1 second, actually. Okay, here we are. Actually, I finally got to the endnotes. So the endnotes, it is not suggested that the political practice of the communist parties is determined by and can be understood in terms of their supposed allegiance to the U.S.S.R. as a bureaucratized worker state. It is rather the case, as Dornhorst has emphasized, that, quote, the communist parties of advanced capitalist societies are reformist parties and have been so for more than 30 years, end quote. See Robert Dornhorst, The Communist Parties of Western Europe, The Origin of the National Roads to Socialism, in The Revolutionary Communist, No. 6, published 1977. The, quote, special relationship, end quote, which nevertheless exists between these parties and the Soviet Union has a continuing significance, however, one aspect of which is expressed in the way in which it conditions political dissent in the U.S.S.R. itself. See on this Ernest Mandel, Three Facets of, quote, Eurocommunism, end quote, from April 1977. End footnote. End note. Any attempt to comprehend and transcend this conjuncture must necessarily start from an analysis of the Soviet Union itself as the first social formation in which capitalism was overthrown and whose deformed and deforming shadow all subsequent anti-capitalist upheavals have inevitably occurred. This is the object of the book. The opening chapter traces the development by the founders of historical materialism of the concept of the transition from capitalist to the socialist mode of production and of the dictatorship of the proletariat as the political counterpart and condition of this socio-economic transformation. Chapter 2 is an appraisal of Lenin's contribution to the problematic of the transition seen in the context of the internal and external milieu in which the first worker state was established. Chapter 3 documents Trotsky's brilliant, if ultimately incomplete, extension of the theory to account for that state's degeneration and to conceptualize the character and dynamics of bureaucratic, quote, totalitarianism, end quote, which issued from it. In chapters 4 to 6, consideration is given to the alternative Marxist analyses of the Soviet social formation, which have subsequently been articulated explicitly or implicitly in opposition to that put forward by Trotsky, and since developed by other theories standing in the same tradition, most notably the Belgian Ernest Mandel, a leading member of the United Secretariat of the Fourth International. This necessitates examining their internal coherence as ostensibly Marxist analyses and assessing also their, quote, external, end quote, correspondence with features and trends apparent in the contemporary U.S.S.R. The present work is a systematic attempt to collate the various strands of the discussion on the socio-economic character of the Soviet Union, clarifying its terms of reference and subjecting the diverse conclusions which have emerged from it to a critical scrutiny. It should be seen as a provisional summary of a debate which is far from being Byzantine. On the contrary, the, quote, Russian question, end quote, remains an ineradicable reference point of revolutionary Marxist politics, and it is in terms of those politics that what follows must ultimately be assessed. The end. Thanks for listening.